You ain't ready for what's about to land on your screen. We're talking secrets that never reached TV, betrayals no one anticipated, and a twist so crazy it could topple an entire reality TV dynasty. This is Circle of Sister Wives, and before we get into the drama, hit that subscribe button, because you're going to want to have front row seats for this. It began with one knock on the door, one plain envelope, and in the amount of time it took to rip it open, Cody Brown's meticulously constructed life began to disintegrate. 3 decades of commitment, sacrifice, and tenuous family bonds broken. The Arizona sun beat down on Flagstaff, but the cold that seeped into Cody wasn't due to the climate. It was due to betrayal. And not from the paparazzi, not from his former wives, but from within his own household. Aurora Brown, Robin's daughter, the child he had vowed to defend like his own flesh and blood. Now she was suing him, charging him with theft, mismanagement, and worse. This was no misunderstanding. This was a deliberate legal attack. And it struck harder than Christine's departure, harder than Janelle's dismay over Garrison. Because this was delivered by the one person he never thought would betray him. So here's the question. What actually went down in that property sale? What did Robin know? And why is Aurora, the daughter figure Cody once gloated about, now at the center of his devastation? Stay right where you are, because what started out like a polygamy fairy tale is about to come apart at the seams into a national scandal. Think forged signatures, secret emails, missing money going viral on TikTok. And a confession so raw, TLC wouldn't air it uncut. The house that once rang with children running barefoot was quiet now. Too quiet. Cody stood motionless in the foyer, and Robin sat glaring at her phone, Aurora's name flashing across the screen repeatedly. But she couldn't bring herself to answer, because this wasn't merely a lawsuit, it was the very flesh of every year of sacrifice, shame, and public scrutiny. The kicker? Robin still possessed an old email, one she'd sent to Cody and Aurora years before, matter-of-factly proposing that the Flagstaff land be placed in Aurora's name for tax purposes. Cody was at the time overwhelmed with brawls with Christine and Janelle and signed without hesitation. That autograph, his blind faith, was now being used as ammunition in court. Aurora's attorneys argued he'd waived all rights, particularly because he'd subsequently attempted to retrieve the property after tensions between family members escalated. The internet ran wild. Hashtags such as Oravi's Cody, Robin New, and Sister Wives Scandal 2022 went viral on TikTok and Twitter. Social media influencers staged courtroom scenes. Legal analysts broke down every step. TLC made a cryptic statement that only fueled the fire. And in Utah, Christine took a sip of coffee and whispered into her phone, "I knew this was coming." Janelle was not surprised either. That man never notices betrayal unless it has my name on it. Meanwhile, back in Flagstaff, Cody paced in his den, hands in his hair. He wasn't merely losing property, he was losing a daughter in every sense but blood. Robin was coming apart at the seams. Tears streamed down her face as Aurora sat with Cody across from her in a sterile mediation room, papers scattered like war wounds between them. She wasn't the little girl who begged for stories at bedtime anymore. She was an adult woman, toughened by years of unsaid truths, who had heard her mother weep behind a closed door. The lawyer's question cut through the silence. Do we want punitive damages? The room came to a standstill, and then Aurora spoke, calm but with an undercurrent of emotion. Yes, not because of the money, but so he'll experience what helplessness feels like. Outside, Robin balled her hands into fists so hard that the knuckles whitened. She felt shame coursing through her chest. Whatever the world might think about this battle, she knew that one thing. Her daughter's suffering had always been genuine. But a public courtroom showdown, that was never part of Robin's plan. Somewhere along the way, she had lost both Cody and Aurora to the same storm. And while her family fractured, the lawsuit caught fire online. Headlines screamed from every tabloid, "Sister Wives Civil War, Kody Brown sued by daughter." Entertainment networks ran with it non-stop. Fans were divided. Some seethed with indignation. Others were in deep sympathy. Reddit threads went wild, scouring back episodes for clues they'd overlooked. "Remember when Aurora cried off camera in season 17 and Kody dismissed it?" wrote one. "It was always there. We just didn't want to acknowledge it." In weeks, the media was excluded from the hearings, yet the tension was impossible to conceal. Kody occupied the defendant's table, surrounded by attorneys but completely isolated. No children, no waves, only silence. Across from him, Aurora sat shoulder to shoulder with her attorneys, her eyes fastened on him. And then came the picture. Aurora at 13. No bruises to be seen, but a face that spoke volumes. The courtroom gasped. The judge did not flinch. And when Dayton, typically quiet, nearly invisible, filed and sealed affidavit, it blew up the room. "I watched my sister disappear," he wrote. "He didn't punch her, but he erased her." Robyn's name never surfaced in the lawsuit, but she was ruined. She quit acting, cancelled interviews, and went dark on social media. The closely crafted persona she'd created fractured with the revelation of Aurora's reality. And then, an entrance no one saw coming. Christine Brown arrived from Utah, gliding unobtrusively into a seat behind Aurora. When Aurora turned around, Christine nodded once, quietly but louder than words. Later, she said in an interview with People magazine, "We always knew something was wrong, we just weren't ready to face it." At last, the verdict arrived. Kody was held responsible, not for physical abuse, but for emotional neglect. Damages, $1, but the effect, enormous. The head of a large polygamous clan was now officially, legally accountable for hurting the child who had once borne his name. Aurora finally spoke out on the steps outside the courthouse. Serene, unambiguous. "This is not revenge," she said into the cameras. "This is acknowledgement, and I hope it makes other daughters have the strength to make their voices heard." Kody, on the other hand, slipped out the side door into his SUV, alone. Not even Robyn tagged along. That dollar award could have been a ton in the passenger seat. The Brown family's silence afterward was oppressive. No yelling fits, no public breakdowns on TV, just a gradual, icy split. And it wasn't even just about the blow to the law, it was about what it represented. All that Kody had worked towards had fallen apart at its own weakness. The official word from TLC was polite but chilling. "We respect the privacy of all family members and will be re-evaluating future programming." Translation, cameras might be shutting off for good. Mary posted an Instagram story, just a black screen with the words, "Truth always finds its voice, even in whispers." Fans went into decoding overdrive. Was it for Aurora, or was it Mary's farewell to a decade-long reality saga? Janelle eventually appeared in a brief garden clip. "Families are messy, ours more than most," she explained, "but I still believe in healing, even when it starts with the deepest scars. No names, no finger-pointing, but her eyes said it all." In the meantime, Robyn's house, once the scene of cringe-worthy family dinners, was cordoned off with privacy screens. Only deliveries of food entered and exited. Dayton was seen lugging bags, allegedly moving in with a friend on the other side of town. The distance wasn't emotional anymore, it was physical. And Kody? He was gone. No press junkets, no tell-all interviews, just disappeared. Rumors circulated, Montana hideout, covert therapy sessions, but none of it mattered. His name had become a wound that the internet just wouldn't leave alone. But it was the next generation that caused the most ripples. Aurora's protest inspired her half-sisters to upload their own implicit, sharp messages. A childhood picture with the caption, "Behind every smile is a story untold." A black and white clip of another daughter singing Creep. Hashtags such as Brown Daughters Speak and Sister Wives Are Silent No More flooded TikTok. TLC moderators struggled to slow the tide. The series that previously marketed itself as an experiment in plural love and faith was now being re-watched with eyes of emotional trauma, favoritism, and denial. Christine, the quiet warrior that she was, rose up to create a support system for adult children of polygamous families. "It's not about dismantling families," she said to the Salt Lake Tribune. "It's about asking what this system actually cost us." And the price wasn't calculated in dollars. It was calculated in stolen years, shattered identities, and silenced voices. The days following the verdict weren't boisterous, they were stiflingly quiet. Cody was seen here and there, but not as himself. No fiery orations, no rebellious proclamations. Just a man disappearing from the limelight that previously defined him. That visibility only added to rumor. When Janelle finally broke her silence on Good Morning America, she didn't hold back. Cody's abuse didn't begin or end with Aurora. Some of us just learned to conceal the bruises, the emotional ones. She paused and then whispered, "Perhaps we kept quiet because we didn't want it all to fall apart. But it has now, hasn't it?" In the background, TLC producers were freaking out. Ratings had soared during the trial, but the narrative had veered into something more sinister than reality TV could contain. Nevertheless, they approved one last special, Sister Wives, The Reckoning. Christine, Janelle, and Mary all agreed to be there. Cody said no. Robin remained in hiding. And when the special premiered 2 weeks later, it began with a gut punch. Aurora, by herself in the mediation room, looking directly into the camera. "What you saw wasn't love," she said. "It was control masquerading as family values. And it took me 20 years to realize it." For 3 unflinching hours, audiences witnessed never-before-seen footage. Cody yelling at his kids, belittling their emotions, shooing away his wife's alarms. By the end of it all, public opinion had turned entirely around. A once beloved fan favorite was now the most reviled man in the Sister Wives community. Boycotts broke out, petitions demanded his permanent banishment from TLC, and the hashtag #JusticeFor Aurora flashed across every corner of the internet. Merchandise once trumpeting the Brown family's special kind of love disappeared from store shelves overnight. Book contracts, podcast appearances, endorsement deals, poof. And then, amidst the turmoil, Mary did something everyone wasn't expecting. She got in touch with Aurora. In a handwritten letter later released by The Atlantic, Mary wrote, "I kept my silence when you needed me to speak. I'm sorry. And if you'll let it, I want to be a part of your healing." Aurora never answered publicly, but sources indicate that the letter is now framed on her writing desk. Weeks following the verdict, Dayton, the unobtrusive background figure in so many Sister Wives moments, finally emerged. His first television interview was with Anderson Cooper. He didn't bat an eye. "When love at home is conditional," he declared, "silence is survival. We weren't a family, we were the audience for Cody's show." The clip spread like wildfire, analysed by mental health experts, hotly debated in think pieces, and even featured in university sociology seminars. All the while, Robin continued to be a spectre in Flagstaff. She was said to leave her house closed. Food deliveries went uneaten for days at a time. One neighbour claimed they spotted her early one morning, barefoot on the porch, gazing out over the desert, as if expecting something that would never come back. The Browns had previously been marketed to America as a flesh-and-blood incarnation of alternative family values. Today, they were a cautionary tale, a slow-motion implosion watched by millions. TLC cameras, once invited into every inch of their lives, were now excluded. The couch interviews were finished, game nights substituted with voicemails and unanswered texts. Janelle, who did not testify, observed at a distance. She called Christine one evening and barely spoke above a whisper. "You did the right thing." Christine's voice trembled. We should have done it a long time ago. Meanwhile, Robin's silence grew thicker. She refused to answer calls. Her final tweet, a perfect sunset photograph captioned, "Even shadows can't exist without light," was dissected by fans clamoring to know if she knew what was coming. Did she see it coming? Did she attempt to prevent it? Or did her hold on Cody drive everyone else away? Behind the scenes, TLC panicked. Sponsors jumped ship. A spin-off focused on Robin and the children was put on hold indefinitely. One of the producers confessed anonymously. The family fell apart faster than we could move the cameras. And meanwhile, in Utah, Aurora stayed with Christine and David Woolley for a weekend. Pictures surfaced, smiles in the kitchen, strolls beneath snow-covered trees. But there was a burden lurking beneath her smile that no fresh air could erase. Because verdicts in court don't cure trauma, they just relocate it elsewhere. There were rumors that Cody would leave Flagstaff for good. He thought he could dictate the story, a friend told Us Weekly. Now the story dictates him. Weeks later, a waitress in a diner in rural Arizona recalled having him sit alone, gaunt and tired. When she offered him anything more, he shook his head and whispered, "I've lost everything I can lose." The backlash extended to TLC, the podcast Sister Wives. Unscripted dropped a 5-part special, The Aurora Tapes, talking to therapists, trauma specialists, and former production staff. A veteran cameraman confessed, "We were instructed to cut camera when the children cried. They didn't want it to be too raw." Outrage followed. Fans called for TLC to drop the secret footage. Justice for Aurora trended for days. And then the next bombshell. Mary shared a 10-minute video on Instagram, sitting by herself in a bare room, directly addressing the camera. "I don't know how to begin," she said, "but I do know where I went astray. I smiled for the cameras while actual pain occurred just off camera. And to Aurora, I apologize." The video went viral online, shared by activists and TV talk shows. The message was straightforward and incisive. Silence is complicity. Cody never responded publicly, but sources claim he sat through it 3 times silently. The Brown name was forever altered. It no longer represented plural love. It represented pain, truth, healing, and the price of silence. TLC had no official announcement, but rumors suggested a short docuseries, less about the Browns themselves, more about trauma, and how reality television sells it. Aurora was quiet. She went to therapy every day, enrolled in online college courses. One fan saw her in a Salt Lake City bookstore, scanning a self-help book. "She looked like she'd come through fire," they wrote, "not burned, changed." Rain pounded the streets back in Flagstaff as Cody drove by himself. Wipers cut at the storm like they could cut off the past. He clutched the steering wheel, caught between denial and disbelief. Silence clung to the walls of Robin's house. The children remained in their bedrooms, coming up with excuses for being anywhere but there. Robin understood. It wasn't about homework. It was about everything. Aurora's testimony had ignited a match, and now the entire house was burning. When Cody at last walked through the door, soaked, spent, and wrapped in loss like a shroud, Robin stood up from the couch. She didn't say anything. He didn't either. And in that silent moment, the weight of all that they'd created and all that they'd lost, suspended in the air like smoke that would never dissipate. The Brown family's dynasty did not fall overnight, but when it did, it fell with a thud. Products that once touted their special love disappeared from store shelves overnight. Book contracts evaporated, endorsements dissolved, offers from podcasts gone. But amidst the chaos, Mary did something nobody saw coming. She called Aurora. In a later handwritten letter published by The Atlantic, Mary confessed, "I remained silent when you needed me to speak. I'm sorry. If you'll permit it, I want to be included in your healing." Aurora never responded publicly, but sources hinted that she placed the letter on her writing desk to this day, and that was merely the start. Weeks following the verdict, Dayton, the reserved ghost in the family background, emerged. In his first ever live interview with stone-faced Anderson Cooper, Dayton wasn't mincing words. "When love in a home is conditional, silence is survival. We weren't a family, we were the audience for Cody's show." The internet went wild. Clips were picked apart by mental health professionals, broken down in think pieces, even presented in sociology courses. Dayton did not cry, but millions of viewers did. While that was happening, Robin all but disappeared. Her gated residence remained locked up, blinds drawn tightly. Neighbors would gossip about meals left to rot on her front porch. One claimed they spotted her early one morning, barefoot, gazing out into the desert as if waiting for someone who'd never arrive. Once, the Browns were a television goldmine for alternative family values. Now they were a slow-motion cautionary tale, a star group broken, each member burning solo. TLC cameras were shut out. Couch interviews? Finito? Game nights? Bye. Just unanswered texts and voicemails to nowhere. Janelle remained aloof, but read each headline, each one weighing on her chest. She phoned Christine one evening. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. Christine's voice broke. "We should have stood up for ourselves years ago." Robin, meanwhile, dropped the silence in a manner that frightened even her best friends. Her final social media update, an ideal sunset photo with the caption, "Even shadows can't exist without light," was a fixation for fans attempting to read her mind. Sponsors were withdrawn. A planned spin-off featuring Robin and her children axed. A producer told Variety, "The family disintegrated sooner than we could reframe the cameras." Meanwhile, Aurora visited Christine and her new husband, David, in Utah. Photos showed them laughing in the kitchen, walking under snow-dusted trees. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. Because court verdicts don't erase trauma, they just move it somewhere else. Rumors circulated that Cody was leaving Flagstaff. No wives and no kids nearby, and there isn't a show left to host. His friend once thought he would be in control of the story and be the boss. Now the story is in charge. A few weeks later, a waitress spots him sitting at a rural diner. He looks gaunt and exhausted. She offered him more food, and he simply shook his head before whispering, "I've lost everything I can lose." The podcast Sister Wives, Unscripted, released a 5-part special examining Aurora's narrative. Therapists, trauma experts, even a retired cameraman disclosed that children crying were never to be filmed according to instructions from producers. Fans blew up. Justice for Aurora trended for 2 consecutive days. And then the twist nobody saw coming. Mary shared a 10-minute video on Instagram. Seated in a simple room, she admitted, "I grinned for cameras while actual pain occurred just off camera. And to Aurora, sorry." The video became a hit. Activists, parents' rights advocates, talk shows, they all shared it. The message was clear. Silence is complicity. A new definition for the Brown name. That summer, the Brown name lost its meaning of plural love. It gained a new meaning of pain, truth, healing, and accountability. Aurora enrolled herself quietly in online college courses and went to therapy on a full-time basis. A fan later saw her browsing a self-help book in a Salt Lake bookstore, Serene, Reborn. Back in Flagstaff, Robin floated through her house like a ghost. The children stayed away from her. When Cody came crawling back one stormy night, wet and defeated, they did not talk. He dumped his keys on the table, closed the bedroom door, and whatever had been there once was extinguished. At the courthouse cafeteria, Christine squeezed Aurora's shaking hand. "You made him face it." Aurora's eyes sparkled, not with fear, but with determination. "I didn't do it to hurt him. I did it because I couldn't carry it anymore." Janelle called later. "You were brave. I'm sorry we weren't." And then something new happened. Christine, Janelle, and Mary put out a joint statement. "We stand with Aurora. No child should feel invisible." It wasn't for Cody's benefit. It was solidarity against him. TLC quietly announced that production was on hold indefinitely. Fans knew that meant the show was done. Aurora started fresh under an assumed name at college. She deleted all social media except for one post. "Healing isn't linear, but I'm not going back." It reached 90,000 likes in one day. Then, behind no cameras or publicity, Christine called on Robin. Two women who had been opponents sat together face to face. Robin stated, "I didn't cover for her." Christine responded, "Neither did I, but we can listen now." Robin wept, not for herself, but for the daughter she couldn't hear. Aurora opted for secrecy rather than spotlight. Robin disappeared from social media. Cody stepped away from television. No goodbye show, no tell-all, just quiet. But that quiet was louder than any finale. And in that wreckage, something new started to grow, a truth that didn't have to scream to be heard. This family's tale is far from over, not even close.